Hello everyone and welcome to the Cyclical Investors Club YouTube channel. My name is Corey Kramer. Today we're going to be analyzing Walt Disney stock. This one came in by request down in the comment section of one of my other videos. If you have a request, just drop it in the comment section and I will eventually get it on the board behind me, get the ticker up there, and eventually I'll make a video. If it's a stock that's in the S&P 500 like Disney is, I post those on YouTube for free. The rest I post on Patreon and the full Cyclical Investors Club service over on Seeking Alpha. Patreon is $5 a month, and if you join there, you can get a big discount to the full service if you ever decide to join there. And I'll have those links down in the description. As always, this isn't individual investing advice. This is just how I analyze stocks. I always like to start with any previous coverage I've had of a stock. I'll zoom out here first with Disney. I did make a very comprehensive Disney video back in 2001 when I initially started the channel for about 3 months, and I was just kind of putting a few things out there, kind of testing how I may want to run the channel in the future. Then I stopped for a while, and then now I'm doing it kind of on a regular basis, like every day almost. I'm going to put a link to that down in the description. It's from February 15th, 2021. And the video is basically why I thought investors would be wise to sell Disney and buy Comcast instead. And I'll look at the performance there, but I would say that video is really good because I actually go into the history of Disney. I talk about the books that I read on Disney, the business, and Walt Disney, the person, much more in-depth than I normally do on stocks, which is mostly quantitative based with a little human judgment layered on top. And so I'm not going to do full justice in this video because I've already covered that, and you can look in the link if you're interested on that. So that came out on, February 15th. That's pretty close, 2021. So since that sell video, the stock is down over 50%, including they stopped their dividend, so including the non-dividend. And so that call turned out to be really good. Now, in fairness, Comcast has not done, I think its returns are negative since then too, but not by very much. And basically once everything bottomed here, Comcast recovered, and then Disney just kept going down, right? So that was a good take and call on my part. I think it was pretty easy, honestly. There was no reason for Disney to be trading at whatever PE ratio it was up here. And really, there's no reason even going into the pandemic for it to trade at a 30 PE. I mean, that was absolutely nuts. They hadn't grown their business in I don't know how many years, really. Once you count like buybacks and everything, things have been pretty flat. So compared to the stock price, I think back in 2015, I actually did write an article one time when the first Star Wars movies were coming out, and I think that's about around here. Like, I don't remember if it was in the summer or the fall, and I was like, buy the movie. It was like a movie theater. I don't think they're still in business anymore. I was like, buy this stock instead of Disney because so much optimism was priced in over Star Wars at that time, and that ended up being a good call as well because soon after you can see Disney dip down and went nowhere basically for 5 years. So this time they were even more egregiously overvalued, and now they're down again. But the stock price is now down. COVID is now mostly over, the heart of it anyway, and we can see earnings are starting to recover. So I think it's a legitimate question. Okay, now maybe is the time to come and buy Disney. It's the way humans and investors sometimes behave is interesting because, when I was bearish on Disney at the beginning, that was a minority opinion, sure, among certain folks. And then now that they've had these controversies or whatever down in Florida with the governor, then now a whole different group of people are bearish on Disney and so I really try to avoid those when I'm investing because it can cloud your judgment, and it makes it's a good idea to look at the numbers. I mean, so it's on one hand, I don't think the political stuff is too much Disney's fault because that's just them trying to appeal to younger people who don't have the same views as all the older people that moved down to Florida to save money on taxes. It's like the most curmudgeon-y people are attracted to that state. And so in the past few years, I mean, the past several years, disproportionately, I would say. And so you have this clash of values going on, and it's you can just look at some basic things. I'll give you my hot take here. I mean, because I since I disagree with everybody's going to hate me anyway. Not about the specific political issues, but just about the dynamics, because really all they ever had to do was wait out DeSantis when it was all said and done. So they just needed to just hold on, because even though he had a big win in Florida, and I study political science, like the investing isn't my primary thing. I mean, I just individually went and looked at the data on that election, and even though he had a giant win, he lost the state with people under 40 years old. So, and you're seeing some of that weakness in the Republican primary now, right? I mean, this is just facts. So he had a lot of popularity, and he was really over pushed, I think, with that when it came to Disney. And Disney really just needed to have the patience, and then Disney investors needed to have the patience if you're just worried about the business and you're not in the politics. So the issues I don't really care about from an investor point of view. So they really just needed to wait him out. It was just a matter of time, right? And you're kind of seeing that a little bit now. Business always wins in America. So just that should be the base assumption of every battle. Businesses only lose to other businesses. So I don't think that's a reason not to own Disney stock, is the point that I'm getting at here. So I do think this could be investable, and I don't think the politics makes it uninvestable, because that will pass, I think. Oddly, even though I think Iger's probably the most overrated CEO since Jack Welch, since he's come back, I do think he's been doing like the things that Disney needed to do. What kind of tarnishes the whole thing is those things are all his fault, and then he ran out the door as fast as he could when COVID hit because he didn't want to deal with it, and then worked to oust the CEO that he chose to replace him, right? So if you're a Disney shareholder, I mean, and Peltz, do whatever Peltz wants to do, all right? Because he's the one that should be running the show at this point. It's not particularly admirable to come in and try to fix your own mistakes when they dumped everything into streaming. Sure, it all was great when the stock price was up here, but once reality set in, then it was totally different. So I don't know. There just needs to be an adult in the room, and so far, I don't think there's an adult in Florida, right? So that's my thinking on that. It is probably investable here. Support any kind of board changes that are going to change the current management, okay? So all those things can be true at the same time. All right, with all that said, let's look at where the numbers actually kind of lead us here. So we have about $4.33 in earnings expected this year. Now, I make a pretty, I think, optimistic assumption here of 15% earnings growth off the bottom. So we have analysts expect 15. This actually came down because I just updated the spreadsheet, so they're getting more bearish this year. Then 20, then 16. So I guess I'm a little more conservative than analysts, but in my mind, I think I'm being optimistic. That's working off this new bottom, this new kind of base or whatever that they're trying to get recovered from, I guess. They still have the same issues that they had with like cable and ESPN and all that. So, but streaming might eventually pay off. They have creative problems. I mean, there's definitely issues here. So the stock is not worth what it was before they had before these issues came to fruition. If they were smart like Comcast, they could have avoided a lot of these problems, right? Which is why I thought Comcast was better. But so yeah, we'll assume like 15% earnings growth, which I think is plenty generous on $4.33 in earnings. They do have a little bit of debt, which I take into account. Add about 30% to the stock price in order to take account for that. We get a 3.55% earnings yield using that method. And so the way I like to think about this is you have $100. You buy the business for $100. It pays you in earnings $3.55, and then that a year, and then that $3.55 grows at 15% for 10 years. You want to see what you have at the end of that 10 years, which is an extra $83. So if you convert that to a CAGR, a 10-year CAGR, start with 100, end with 183, that's about a 6.23% CAGR. That's actually cheaper than the market, but it's about fair value. But the caveat to this is 6.5 is about fair value. So if the stock price drops a little bit more, it would be right in the center of fair value. The caveat to this is this does not include a recession at all. So this assumes 15% growth, which is fast, although coming off a bottom, for 10 years without any down years in there. Or if there are down years, then they will grow faster than that and make up for it during that time. So, you're always just trying to make the best guess that you can, the best estimate that you can. I think on some ways I'm probably too optimistic with the earnings growth, but it's definitely possible. In other ways, I'm not including really a recession with this number here. But I do have a way where I do include recessions, so we can look at that. I'm not going to go into the details. I'll just give you the straight up numbers here. So if you're kind of soft landing camp, or maybe someday we'll have a recession, but not in the next 2 years or so, then this price right here would have a margin of safety and good returns, 65.50. So about 28% lower than where the stock is now. That would be kind of a buy price. If you think we could have a recession sooner rather than later, that will affect Disney for sure. And I think, this lower price under $50 is probably more where you would want to aim. You could get a shot at a lower price. They would have to start working from a lower base probably. Earnings would probably fall at least a year or so. And that could be an opportunity to really come in at this lower level and potentially make some money. So right now I'm using this one. There might come a point in time I decide to use this one. And it's such a tricky situation because I really do think since Iger's come back, he's done the sort of things that needed to be done. So the right decisions are now kind of being made, I think. Everybody can kind of see that that parks is where they actually make money. I mean, if you go look at my other video, that's exactly what I told everybody back then. I mean, and Disney was it was just a bad decision. This whole streaming thing, the way that they did it was just bad. So when the parks are where they made money, I think if they were smart, what they would do is build parks in other states besides Florida. Go to New Mexico and build a smaller themed, Tatooine themed park in the desert, right? New Mexico would love it. They could use more tourism. It would be a smaller park. People wouldn't have all these horrible crowds and everything that they have by when everything's all crammed together. It'd be a whole nother revenue area for Disney, and it's just a win-win-win for everybody. And then when Florida starts rattling their drum, you can just put more resources and you could do that in other states too, or other countries. Build a theme park in Brazil. I mean, so it would take pressure off the Florida parks, and so everybody wins then. So those are the type of things that I think where the energy should be being put. And it just was a failure to recognize where they actually make their money, their steady money. The movies make money sometimes, but other times they don't. So it's that core business. The movies, I'm going to repeat a bunch of stuff now from my other video. But I mean, that's just where you generate the interest for your moneymaker, which is the parks, right? That's how the whole thing should be thought about. And when that happens, I think Disney will be able to come back over time. But it's going to take time, and you definitely want to buy it cheap, is what I would say. Okay, so there are my maybe controversial thoughts on Disney. I don't know. A lot of this I talked about in the last video, although we've had a few more things come up since then. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. If you found it useful, hit the like button, and I'll see everybody later.